Ooh. Hello, YouTubers! My name's Willie. Welcome to my channel. Today, I have reaction request 117. This is the beginning of the Cursed Founding series. Now, this is another one requested by CJ Falcon and has been produced by Arch Warhammer. So, let's check this out. Let's try that again. Play. Do do. Do do.
Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to more Warhammer 40k lore. Today we are going to be talking about the Cursed Founding, and also one of the main reasons why I'm annoyed at Special Snowflake Marines. Because it's not just the fact that they are Space Marines, although that is pretty egregious in and of itself, or the fact that Belisarius Kroll somehow managed to keep this a secret from everyone. God only knows how he did that. But because we've tried this before. The so-called Cursed Founding was the 21st founding of Space Marine chapters, and the second largest founding of Space Marine chapters after the Great Heresy. But the goal was not merely to produce bucket loads of new and sparkly clean Space Marines. It was also to improve upon the Gene Seed, removing its identified flaws and improving upon its overall efficiency, resulting in a Primarch-like Space Marine, referred to as Homo sapiens novus. And do stop me if any of this is starting to sound a little bit familiar. But unlike the relatively successful, so far at the very least, Special Snowflake Marines, the 21st founding resulted in something considerably less pretty, shall we say. With several of the chapters turning to chaos, and others, even though they still remain loyal, having some rather unfortunate disfigurements, like, for example, constantly being wreathed in flames, or growing horns out of their heads, shit like that. The general kind of stuff that the Inquisition and the Ordo Hereticus look at with deep-seated suspicion. And hell, a few of them have even gone way beyond what it means to be human. And to give you a general idea of just how far beyond human we're talking here, the Space Marine chapter that was wreathed entirely in flames would be one of the less extreme transformations. But, despite numerous failures, many of which were immediately cached and attempted wiped from existence, there were some successes, which is why the founding was allowed to continue. The Black Dragons, for example, originally looked entirely fine. The fact that they later turned into some kind of demonic hell beast-looking thing is, you know, it's a minor problem. They are still loyal after all, although the Inquisition is looking at them with sideways glances every now and then, wondering if there mightn't be some kind of excuse they could come up with to purify the whole boneheaded lot of them. And to be entirely fair, not without reason. As mentioned, most of the chapters founded during the 21st founding eventually found their way into the service of chaos. So it is not particularly surprising that the Inquisition views them with just a tad bit of suspicion. Hell, not just the Inquisition, the entirety of the Imperium views them with a healthy dose of skepticism. Many Imperial authorities will simply refuse to fight alongside a chapter that has been identified with the 21st founding, fearing that they will suddenly just go batshit insane and start murdering absolutely everything, which, again, is not an entirely unfounded fear. But you might be wondering, why was this even allowed to continue? It sounds like a bit of a shit show, and well, you would be entirely correct, it was a bit of a shit show. Most of the chapters that were produced during the 21st founding turned to chaos. Most of those who remained loyal turned, well, either batshit insane, mutated some kind of horrible form, although mostly within the acceptable limits of horrible form, and some were cursed with more esoteric fates, like, for example, the poor Lamenters, which, well, We don't know really what's wrong with them, but somebody out there with a hell of a lot of power has one massive hate boner for that particular poor little chapter. But either way, you really would think that the higher-ups would go, well, okay, this is a really bad idea. Let's throw on the brakes soon, shall we? This bunch of Astartes have burst into flame. These guys are cursed with some kind of cosmic ill fate. These guys are growing fucking horns. How about we slam on the brakes right about goddamn now? But clearly somebody said, no. Let's see what's gonna happen. And the only reason that would possibly be allowed to continue is either, A, nobody fucking knew about this, I'm looking at you, Kroll, I really am, and I'm expecting that the Primaris Marines might start showing some defects themselves in not too long. No, I genuinely am. The Primaris Marines are just too perfect for the 41st millennium. I would not be at all surprised if in a couple more years Games Workshop is going to be by the way, you remember when we made all of the Space Marines players rebuy their Space Marines? How about, my beloved little Chaos friends, we give you some attention as well and allow you to rebuy your Chaos Space Marines? What a deal. And if you buy now, we'll only charge you £50 for a squad. Mark my fucking words, it is going to happen. But back to the whole Cursed Founding thing. It would appear that the actual objective of the Cursed Founding was not merely, quote-unquote, to create a superior Space Marine, a Primaris Space Marine, if you will. It would appear that it might have been something even more ambitious. Because here's the thing.
Like what?
The experiment itself was eventually abandoned. The laboratory was sealed up, and apparently everyone just walked away. Now, I would be very surprised if that was what actually happened, but well. 5,000 years after the founding, sometime in the 41st millennium, a group of tech explorers happened upon the abandoned laboratory that was used in the 21st founding. At this point, pretty much everything in the way of records of the founding had been stricken from Imperial records. So the explorators, once they found the place, were basically scratching their heads and wondering, why is a huge fuck-off Adeptus Mechanicus lab just sitting here on this dead, completely abandoned planet? And when I say dead and abandoned planet, I really mean it. The planet was Inculaba, and it was completely stripped of everything, as if a Tyranid fleet had gone over it with a fine-tooth comb. It was utterly and completely dead, which is why it was even more surprising when they came across a fully functioning, or well, used to be fully functioning, Adeptus Mechanicus gene lab. And let me remind you, the Adeptus Mechanicus never delete or forget anything. They must have known about this, and yet nothing in Imperial records, which suggests something really, really bad happened. And
just a little bit.
What suggests something even worse happened is that the Adeptus Mechanicus would never just simply leave something like this. Tons, literal tons upon tons of technology simply abandoned. There are very few things the Adeptus Mechanicus take more of a dislike to than being told to leave something behind. They have on multiple occasions shown that they are more than willing to disobey direct orders from the Imperial Inquisition if it means they are allowed to keep their toys. So abandoning all of this seems fucking unlikely. And yet, there were no, at the very least, overt signs that it had been broken into, or in any other way compromised. And the reason for that assumption is that the explorators found logs deep within the complex talking about the 21st foundings and the various experiments they had made in improving upon Space Marine gene seed. Surely anyone that had broken into the place would at the very least have taken the recordings, considering they were, kind of important, detailing all of the various experiments, etc.
Yeah.
And at the very deepest recesses of the massive facility, the explorators found 3 biotanks, 2 of which had clearly been damaged, in all due likelihood just due to the fact that they had been down there for 5,000 goddamn years without any kind of maintenance.
Yeah,
the biotanks were completely filled up with a discolored liquid, as the various systems that would be cleaning and constantly replenishing the tanks broke down thousands of years ago. and thusly the inhabitants of the two tanks were very, very much so dead. Dead as doornails, left to rust for 5,000 goddamn years. However, the third tank was still operational, and inside of the third tank, just like in the previous two, was a massive individual, similar in proportions to that of a space marine. However, he was much, much larger. Now, this could potentially be the precursor to the Primaris Space Marines, but judging by the description, he would appear to be even larger than a Primaris Space Marine, meaning that the lab might have been trying to reproduce Primarchs. And this would not be the first time this has been done. Fabius Bile had created a Primarch previously, although to be fair, he did not create it from scratch. He cloned the War Master, Horus, although there are considerable evidence to suggest that he was not quite as good as the original. The main evidence being that he was killed by Phaelbodon, of all people. And you can say whatever you want about Horus, but he definitely wasn't that shit at fighting. Though again, to be fair, we do not know for sure that this Primarch, if a Primarch indeed he was created from scratch. It is of course entirely possible that the Gene Smiths of the Adeptus Mechanicus had essentially done the exact same thing that Fabius Bile had, and had cloned a Primarch. It is also possible, although I would say it is extremely unlikely, that he was not a recreated Primarch at all, but one of the original Primarchs. I would consider this to be excessively unlikely, but the possibility is there. Though again, to be entirely honest, I don't know which one I consider to be more unlikely. That the Adeptus Mechanicus somehow managed to recreate a Primarch from scratch, or that they managed to convince a living Primarch to wander his happy ass into a biotank and close the door behind him. And of course, as I mentioned previously, it might not have been a Primarch at all. It could have been a very rough predecessor to the Primaris Space Marines. That is, if anything, perhaps even more plausible, although his sheer bulk would suggest that this would be unlikely, but then again, merely increasing a creature's size is probably the easiest part of creating a super soldier. But regardless of who, or indeed what, was inside the container, shit was once again about to hit the fan with supersonic velocity, because of course the explorators could not keep their grubby little hands away from the merchandise. And so they decided to open up the two dead containers first, and begin prodding away at the corpses inside. What exactly they discovered, we do not know, because at no point did the explorators decide to phone home. Though once again, we cannot be entirely certain that they didn't at least try, because just like any records of the 21st founding has been deleted, any records of their explorators have also been, you guessed it, deleted. In fact, the only reason we know about this at all is due to inquisitorial records. The Inquisition has always viewed the Mechanicus with just a tad of suspicion. Like they view basically anything. An Inquisitor will view his own grandmother with considerable amounts of suspicion, and will frequently have her screened for chaos corruption. And of course, if any of these scans were to detect even the slightest trace amount of the potential for chaos corruption, well, you know what's going to happen to Grandma, don't you?
Exterminatus.
Voila! Problem solved. And once again, their suspicion turned out to be correct. They had long since infiltrated the Mechanicus in many places, and one of those infiltrators were inside the explorator group that had landed upon the planet, and then broken into the facility. Said infiltrator were now sending furious signals back home saying fuck, hurry up, need help. Or something to that effect, anyways. And while the Inquisition is usually pretty damn quick to act when anybody screams heresy, they did not get there in time. My supposition is that the explorator team, once again unable to keep their dirty, filthy, grubbing paws off the merchandise, decided, we're kinda sick of poking away at the dead ones. Let's see what the alive one has to say for itself. What happened next was about as predictable as you could possibly get it to be. Basically, think classical horror movie. They open the box, and the content of said box decides to bludgeon them all to death, steal their ship, and fuck off. By the time the Inquisition arrived, the planet below was as dead as it had always been, and the only trace that anyone had ever been there was a slowly fading warp trail. Then there's of course also the possibility that something considerably worse had happened. One of the logs discovered in the laboratory suggested that one of their creations had managed to send a message to Fabius Bile. How precisely said monstrosity managed to figure out Fabius's cell phone number, I don't know. I'm assuming he had access to some kind of chaotic yellow pages or something. And dear old Fabius is of course always very, very interested when it comes to improving upon Space Marines. He himself has been trying to do this for over 10,000 years. And considering Fabius Bile was one of the best geneticists of his time, and had access to tons of research material, and a Primarch who was fully willing to cooperate with his experiments, you'd think that if anyone could figure out how to make primary Space Marines, it would be Fabius Bile. But that is of course not what happened. Some random-ass Mechanicus dude did it instead, which is quite the achievement considering he had access to less information, less technology, had to deal with considerably less resources, didn't have direct access to a Primarch as far as we know, he had to keep it a secret from everyone, and he couldn't possibly live as long as a Space Marine that has been blessed by chaos. But again, fucking details. And yes, I'm still extraordinarily salty about the Special Snowflake Marines, and trust you me, I'm going to be making a video on them at some point, explaining in detail why they are bullshit, but this is not that today. But to return once again to the point, it might have been that Chaos showed up and stole everything in the lab, but I would consider this to be relatively unlikely. The lab at this point had been abandoned for a very, very long time in all due likelihood, considering the general state of disrepair, nobody having heard about it, etc, etc. Which means that any signal sent to Fabius Bile from one of these traitors must have happened quite literally thousands of years ago, which would mean that it would be beyond convenient for them to show up now of all times. But of course, Chaos works in mysterious ways. Fuck, the Warp works in mysterious ways. They might have been on their way to this place for the last 5,000 years, and the Warp simply just decided to spit them out now. It's certainly not impossible, but somewhat unlikely. And just pointing this out here, but there is another organization that rushed to the site, and when they arrived there, they went, "Oh, sorry guys, we couldn't find anything. We found a weak warp trace, but, you know, we couldn't really follow it, you know. We had more pressing inquisitorial business to go about. So sorry, there was nothing there, don't go look or anything. We are definitely not hiding anything of this whatsoever. Don't look in my basement, I'll fucking kill you." I'm just saying, the Inquisition does have a habit of keeping things to themselves.
Really?
And the really interesting part of this is of course going to be looking into the various chapters, which is what I'm going to be doing for the next few weeks. I'm not going to add it in here because I am a filthy, dirty, money-grubbing Jew, and we are entering into the last 3 months of the year when ad revenue actually goes up for once, so next week. So until then, I have been Arch. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again next week, where we will be talking about the Black Dragons.
Ooh.
Oh yes, much cool. Much awesome.
Finally learning about some Astartes. Yay. Oh, that's good news. That's good news right there. This will be fun. Okay, so that was Reaction Request 117, The Cursed Founding. Quite a lovely video made by Arch. Go check out his stuff. There's a link in the description, so go check it out. And requested by CJ Falcon. Thank you for requesting this. Series that I do plan on continuing with. So, yeah. My thoughts. Apparently this is the 21st founding, where they were trying to create more Space Marine. Maybe. Most of which were corrupted, or mutated, or crazy, or didn't make it. And the experiment, it seems like everybody just walked away from it, sealed it up, killed the planet, and forgot about it. but they don't forget about stuff, so that's a little hard to believe. And may have been trying to create a Primarch, which that's some pretty scary stuff. The informational source that we know because of a spy in the group, but that's all we know. That's all we know. It mentioned that they opened up the third container, and there's a good chance that it killed off the explorers and then flew off in their spaceship. Like, missed opportunity to build a new developed character. So it'll be interesting if that is developed on later, or if something came along and killed it off along with all the explorers. Yeah, that's pretty much what I learned. What I'm thinking about it is this looks like it's going to be some fun. Checking out some of these, what he calls quote-unquote special snowflake Astartes. And I'm always willing to learn more about Astartes, because Astartes are pretty darn interesting. Yeah, so it's always fun when new ones are introduced, and the black dragons he's mentioned before, and they have been mentioned in other videos. But like, yeah, not much information about them. So it'll be cool. Yeah. That's about all I got to say about that. So, reminder, this being the 117, I do have a video that has 111 through 130 of my requests. So you can go check out that video. You can see what's next. What's next is 118, which has a question mark on it, but don't worry, there is a video for it, and there is an explanation for the question mark. Okay. Till next time, Willie, out.
If you like the video, stay tuned for more content. And as always, feel free to comment. Have a good one.